Well, good morning. As I was thinking about what to preach on this last week and what to share with this group, there was a passage that just kept rolling around in my head, and that was Ephesians chapter 6. And so I want to do a little work with you out of Ephesians chapter 6 today. Ephesians chapter 6, verses 10 through 12, the text there says, "Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places." There is a scene from the movie Patton in which George Patton is preparing to face Germany's most decorated military leader, Erwin Rommel. Rommel is preparing to launch a massive assault on Allied troops in North Africa, and his specialty is tank warfare. However, Patton has intercepted a German radio transmission, and so he knows about the impending attack before it happens. On the morning of the battle, General Patton is awakened by his aides, and one of them notices a book on George Patton's nightstand. The title of the book was "The Tank in Attack" by Erwin Rommel. And as the movie goes on, and of course the Allied forces win decisively, Patton shouts across the field at his enemy, "Hey, I read your book." As we think about fighting a spiritual battle, the best way to win is to become familiar with the enemy's tactics, to gain knowledge of his ways, to study his strategies. And we need to realize that we are fighting a spiritual battle. Spiritually, we recognize that our enemy is Satan. He is named as such in Luke chapter 10 and in verse 18. Matthew chapter 4 speaks of him as the devil and the tempter. The book of Revelation calls him a dragon and a serpent, of course, alluding back to the language of Genesis chapter 3. If we are going to win spiritual battles, though, we've got to know more than just who he is or what he's called. We have got to know how he operates. And so as Paul speaks of the need to put on our armor and fight, he describes Satan's character and speaks of his tactics. And so today, really, I'm going to start a little mini series thinking about how Satan attacks us as disciples of Christ. And the first way in which he does that is through deception. Jesus makes reference to Satan as the father of lies in John 8 and verse 44. The Hebrew writer in Hebrews 3 and 13 would speak about the deceitfulness of sin. Here in this passage today in Ephesians chapter 6, Paul writes for us to take a stand against the wiles of the devil. Your version may translate that as the schemes of the devil. The Greek word for scheme is the word from which we get our English word for methods. These are the methods, the tactics of the devil. Paul is saying that we must watch out for the subtle methods of the devil because he attacks, again, through deception. What are his schemes? What are his deceiving ways? Well, one thing is that he blinds people to the truth. Paul would say in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, the God of this age has blinded the minds of those in the world. Again, in 2 Corinthians 11 and verse 14, Paul says, Satan himself transforms himself into an angel of light. And one way in which he does that is by making sin look appealing. Even if you go all the way back to Genesis chapter 3, he made sin look appealing to Eve through the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the pride of life. And 1 John chapter 2 tells us that he tempts us in the same ways. As he makes sin look appealing, whether that be sexual sin, you can read about in Proverbs chapter 5, or the abuse of alcohol, which you can read about in Proverbs chapter 23. What he does not do is reveal the outcome. You see, in that moment of time, something is appealing. But of course, Satan doesn't tell you how it ends up. And so, young people, as someone who's a little bit older, and as someone who has learned some lessons, sometimes the hard way, when that moment comes, and it will, when you are tempted to do something, to say something, to act in a way that you should not, think beyond that moment. Think to what is going to happen. What is the consequence? What is the outcome of this? Satan does not want you to see that. He wants you to be blinded to that, only focusing on that moment. And so again, as we think about the ways in which Satan attacks, one way is through deception. But again, if we know how he's going to attack, we will be better prepared. I hope this helps you. I hope you think about these things, and Lord willing, we'll continue these thoughts in our next time together.